Hello, B. Crittenden Freeman here. It's one of the last videos I'm going to put out on this cultural appropriation conflict occurring within the Mankind Project. Now, there's one particular issue I believe we have not had a robust conversation on. Appropriation, real or perceived? Is there real injury going on, or is it projected wounds? And that's what I think we really need to get into at this point. Now, I think we can all have an understanding that indigenous people here in North America have gone through 500 plus years of what I call genocidal enslavement, which includes such things as murder, rape, torture, kidnapping, child trafficking, breaking of treaties, dishonesty, lack of integrity, and much more, all for the purpose of obtaining indigenous resources, the lands. And understanding of that, people should then have an understanding that indigenous people would be very, very wary and mistrusting of those folks expressing their culture or working with them in any fashion. Now, the concept of appropriation, though, here within this vehicle we call the United States of America, a melting pot of people, appropriation is going to happen amongst all the cultures, amongst all the people, regardless of whether one believes there is permission or not. That is natural for it to happen. And there are unnatural things that happen too. But cultural appropriation has occurred amongst all the cultures across the board. Now, as an example of that, I refer to, for example, Eric Clapton playing the blues and becoming a millionaire after playing the blues. Back in the 60s, before pop hit, a lot of the rock groups in England were all blues related. Blues was very popular back then. And of course, as you know, blues is a Black American cultural expression. And the white groups made a lot of money off of that, and the black groups did not. Now, another example of cultural appropriation today is, in fact, indigenous rappers who have taken on black urban culture. Young indigenous folks are doing rap, and they're also doing breakdancing, black artistic expressions from the urban youth, incorporated into indigenous culture. So I'm just sharing that in terms of this melting pot called United States of America, along with the indigenous sovereign countries, appropriating. That is the reality. Now, let's bring this down to MKP. The biggest focus has been on the Sweat Lodge. The Lodge Keepers Society, LKS, has been the group that has been the most respectful of indigenous culture in all their expressions. A big point of contention has been the receiving of the gift of the Sweat Lodge, and whether that has been authorized or non-authorized. Now, the reality is this: between the sovereign nations, USA and indigenous sovereign nations, there is no violation that has occurred in terms of the gifting. There are a variety of spiritual gifts. The person with whom they dealt with, it was a part of his spirituality to pass on the gift. And for his spirituality and his expression, it was okay for him, the one man, to pass on the gift. There is no agreement between the sovereign nations stating that this Sweat Lodge service, it's not a product. It's not something you can grab and touch and sell. It's a service. There is no agreement between the nations saying that that service can only be administered gifted through a certain consortium. None. There are no UN declarations that are binding here between the United States government and the UN. That doesn't occur. So there are no violations. It is okay as of right now today for one man with an indigenous culture to pass on a gift, because that is a part of his spirituality. Now, obviously, there are people who don't agree with that. Lots of people on the indigenous side who don't agree with that, and there are people on the non-indigenous side who don't agree with that. But the reality is, that's the way it is. So the point that I'm making is there has been no violation. The point being, though, if a person states they feel harm by going through and experiencing that, is there actual harm being done? Well, should I feel or express that I'm being harmed by seeing videos of indigenous youth doing rap or breakdancing? I could do that. And that represents a choice on my part. I could think to myself, well, hey, great. I like to hear that culture has been passed on. Or I could think to myself, well, what are they doing that for? That's only for black folks. Same thing goes for blues guitarists such as Eric Clapton. I can tell you that there are tons of black folks who hate Elvis Presley, who have no problem saying all Elvis Presley did was rip off of black culture and make lots of money doing it. It's always going to go both ways. However, the concept of harm, of feeling harm, that's a personal choice. It's not something that's being inflicted onto somebody here within MKP. Simply because somebody goes through a sweat lodge and they are thinking to themselves, in my projection, I believe white folks should not be doing what they're doing. That does not mean that harm is there, or there's an intention to harm, or there's causal harm. It's a choice to have that thought. No one has to take responsibility for somebody else's thoughts or for the state of being that one is choosing to put oneself in. That is what's occurring here. People are requiring others to take responsibility for the wounds that they have. People who have not caused the wounds. As an example, what I say is, as a black man, I do not hold white people today responsible for what occurred in the past in terms of racism and discrimination. I will hold people accountable, white people accountable, for what happens today. But what happened to me as a child, I'm not going to hold white people of today responsible for that. I believe that is what's occurring here with MKP. MKP is being held responsible for wounds that occurred that had nothing to do with MKP and that MKP is not currently doing. However, now that I've said all that, and that is a big area that we have not had a robust conversation and a robust dialogue on, there's absolutely nothing wrong with an organization deciding to make changes to be of better service to all cultures. What I would have preferred is that MKP make a statement such as, no violations have been committed by anybody here with MKP. However, we are choosing to make modifications and to work with all cultures so that the gifts that we offer can be of better support and service to all men. Now that's a win-win statement. It's a win-win statement without pointing fingers, without shaming and blaming, without knocking the LKS guys. That's a win-win statement. I wish that MKP would have come out and done something such as that. I disagree with the statement of Robert Moore said that sometimes the warrior stands in his pain. That was not necessary, in my opinion. We could approach it from the point of view of both sides. One, yes to making changes, and yes, no violations have occurred, because no violations is the reality. So that is where this video is at. This is where we missed having a robust conversation. And the point of having these robust, real talks, real conversations, is to have a deeper understanding and clarity of the issues that are present in front of us. Lastly, there are some, what this whole situation has shown us are the gifts that we can build upon. The shadows that have come up have been, we are challenged with teamwork. We are challenged with conflict resolution. We are challenged with listening. We are challenged with communicating. We are challenged with empathy. Here are two things that are big challenges that are not really being discussed about. One is called white guilt, and the other one's called white saviorism. White guilt is, oh, gee, I feel so bad what's happened to indigenous people. I believe that's occurred quite a bit within the context of this conflict. White saviorism is, well, I'm going to take care of those guys. They have been treated so badly, and I'm going to make sure they're all going to, oh, these poor little people, I'm going to make sure they're going to get what is often referred to as the so-and-so people's great white hope. Those shadows need to be looked at, need to be talked about, need to be addressed. But the challenge in front of us, all of it, the goal we can get from that to make us better at what we do, just amongst ourselves, teamwork, conflict resolution, listening, communicating, empathy. Right now, we do have an introduction to conflict resolution workshop, and that is a starting point for all of us to take that course and then to practice what we learn in that course. One must practice. One cannot sit down at a piano, learn one chord and say, oh, well, I can join a symphony. You must practice, practice, practice. Same thing with going to this course, Introduction to Conflict Resolution. Once you take it, you then must practice what you learn so that you can be better at working through issues when they come up, so that we can all be better at them. Listening is a skill to be developed just like any other. I refer to it as interactive listening. Reflective listening is a part of interactive listening, yes. What I'm attempting to share is the gold that we can mine from all of this to do what Rich Grijalva said, the healing that is necessary for our organization. So, recapping here. Appropriation, yes. Cultural appropriation happens across the board. MKP has been extremely respectful. MKP is willing to make modifications to be a better service and support to all cultures. Harm and injury, no. No. The harm and injury, I believe, is individual and self-inflicted, in my opinion. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you know how to contact me. Be Freeman all.